Hey guys, welcome back to our new course on TensorFlow. It's our brand new course. So in this TensorFlow tutorial, this is designed for both beginners and professionals. Okay, and this tutorial provides all the basic and advanced concepts of machine learning and deep learning concepts such as deep learning, deep neural network, image processing, and sentiment analysis. So this we are doing by using TensorFlow. Okay. So first, what is TensorFlow? You must have learned Python. You must have learned the libraries available in Python. Yes. So you must have been aware of NumPy, Pandas. Okay, so these are the libraries for performing machine learning tasks. And similarly, TensorFlow is one of the most famous deep learning framework developed by Google team. Okay, so this TensorFlow is developed by Google team. Okay, it is a free and open source software and designed in Python programming language. Okay, so you need to be fluent in Python if you want to learn TensorFlow, because TensorFlow is designed in Python programming language and it's an open source software. This tutorial is designed in such a way that we can easily implement deep learning project on TensorFlow in an easy and efficient way. Okay, so let's begin. So as I told you, TensorFlow is completely based on Python. So it is essential to have basic knowledge of Python. And you need to have good understanding of basic mathematics and artificial intelligence concept. So these things will make us easily understand the TensorFlow. Okay. So what are the prerequisites? What are the main problems? What are the main things you must be aware of when you come to learn TensorFlow? So you can see a list of prerequisites is given. So the first one is algebra. Then you need to be aware of little linear algebra, then trigonometry, then statistics, then calculus, Python programming, and some bash terminal, or some cloud console for executing the TensorFlow programs. Okay, so if your Python is currently not supporting TensorFlow, there are a series of steps you need to follow to make the TensorFlow work on your Python idle. Okay, and you can also install Anaconda framework and use this Anaconda navigator to launch TensorFlow, okay, using Jupyter Notebook or any other platform. So you need to have the basics of algebra, linear algebra, trigonometry, statistics, calculus, and Python programming. So in our upcoming lectures, we will see the basics, some basics of these topics. What are the prerequisites of TensorFlow? Okay, so these are the prerequisites. So let's go ahead. Now let's clearly understand what is TensorFlow. Okay, so TensorFlow, as I told you, it's a popular framework of machine learning and deep learning. It is a free and open source library which is released on 9th November 2015 and developed by Google Brain team. It is entirely based on Python programming language and used for numerical computation and data flow, which makes machine learning faster and easier. TensorFlow can train and run the deep neural networks for image recognition, handwritten digit classification, recurrent neural network, also called as RNN, then word embedding, then natural language processing, also known as NLP, then video detection, and many more. TensorFlow is run on multiple CPUs or even GPUs, okay, graphical processing unit. And also you can run it on mobile operating systems. The word TensorFlow is made by two words, okay? So just like if you're not aware, NumPy is numerical Python and Pandas is panel data. So similarly, TensorFlow is also made up of two words. The one is tensor and one is flow. So what is the meaning of tensor and what is the meaning of flow? Let's see that. So tensor is nothing but a array, okay? So tensor is, in its simple terms, is an array. The array can be one-dimensional or two-dimensional or multi-dimensional. So tensor is basically a multi-dimensional array. Then flow. What is flow? Flow is used to define the flow of data in operation, okay? So it consists of a graphical representation of the operations, and one operation can lead to one or more other operations. So together we call it as a tensor flow. So tensor is a multi-dimensional array and flow is the flow of data in the operations. So you can see a picture shown in the slide. TensorFlow is used to define the flow of data in operation on a multi-dimensional array or tensor. So you can see the picture what I have shown you. It's the left side is the tensor, so you can see in the picture in the slide. So the tensor, which is nothing but a multi-dimensional array, here in case this is a two-dimensional array, and the flow is very important. You can see the initial nodes, that is B and C. So B and C are the nodes, are the leaf nodes, which will have some values, and when you take those two nodes, you want to multiply them, okay? So the multiplication is a node, okay? And then the product what you obtain by multiplying B and C, along with that you're adding another node A. So now the operation becomes addition, okay? So the addition, if you come from top to bottom, the addition is between A and the product, and product is obtained by multiplying B and C. So this is a flow. This is known as a flow in operation, okay? So this is how a TensorFlow works. Okay. So next, we will see the history of TensorFlow. So Google developed TensorFlow to improve its products like Google search engine, Gmail, and Photos. Okay, so these are based on the deep neural networks, which uses the TensorFlow. Okay, so the TensorFlow is used in every Google product to improve their services. So those things we will see in the upcoming lectures. So the Google built a framework called TensorFlow to permit researchers and developers to work together in AI model. Once it approved and scaled, it allows lots of people to use it. Okay, the first version of TensorFlow was released in 2015, and the stable version was released in 2017. And it's an open source platform, means you can readily download the TensorFlow. You can even reorganize, modify the existing components of the TensorFlow and you can release it in the market without paying anything to the Google. Okay, so these are the features and history of TensorFlow. Then coming to the components of TensorFlow. So you will need to understand the concept, the components of TensorFlow. So the first and very important component of TensorFlow is tensor. The name tensor is derived from its core framework, tensor. Okay. So the tensor is always present in TensorFlow. A tensor is a vector or a matrix of n-dimensional values that represents all type of data. All values in a tensor hold similar type of data with a known shape. The shape of the data is the dimension of the matrix or the array. Okay, so what is it? A tensor is a vector. It means a single dimensional array, or a matrix. Matrix is a multidimensional array. So a tensor holds, the values in a tensor holds similar type of data with a known shape, and the shape of the data is nothing but the dimension of the matrix. Okay, then a tensor can be generated from the input data or the result of a computation. So how do you obtain a tensor? It can be present in the input, or when you perform the operations and when you get the result, you can also you can also generate a tensor. A TensorFlow, in TensorFlow, all operations are conducted inside a graph. Okay, so it is very important. So TensorFlow is mainly a graphical representation. So all the operations are conducted inside a graph. The group of this graph is a set of calculations that take place successively. Okay, each transaction is called an op node. Okay, so this is very important. Each transaction in the TensorFlow is called an op node, that is an operation node. And you can see the diagram for the graphical representation. So it has tensors, it has dimension, it has op nodes. Okay, so TensorFlow, the next component is graph. Graph is a very important component. TensorFlow makes use of a graph framework. The chart gathers and describes all the computations done during the training. Then what are the advantages of TensorFlow? The TensorFlow was fixed to run on multiple CPU or GPU and mobile operating systems. The portability of the graph allows to conserve the computations for current use or the later use. The graph can be saved because it can be executed in the future. All the computation in the graph is done by connecting tensors together. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. You will have an example there. So we will have an expression where A equals B plus C multiplied by C plus 2. Yes, so you can see the expression A equals B plus C multiplied by C plus 2. So when we split this expression individually, it becomes, so what is B plus C? So B plus C, you can call it as D. Okay, so D equals B plus C, and C plus 2 you can call it as E. So E equals C plus 2. And now if you want to rewrite the expression, you will write it as A equals D multiplied by E, correct? Because B plus C is D and C plus 2 is E. So A equals D multiplied by E. Now we can represent these operations graphically. So you can see a graphical representation when you come from top to bottom. A equals D multiplied by E, where D equals b plus c, and e equals c plus 2. And d equals b plus c, you have used b and c from the below nodes, correct? And e equals c plus 2, right? So to find out a, we must first have d and e. And to find out d and e, we must first have b plus c, correct? So b plus c, you can see the bottommost nodes are b and c, correct? So these are known as, all these nodes are known as op nodes, operation nodes. And finally, very important component of TensorFlow is session. A session can execute the operation from the graph. To feed the graph with the value of a tensor, we need to open a session. Inside a session, we must run an operator to create an output. So when you print the results without creating the session, you will not actually get the result. You will get the information about the program. And to generate the result, what you need to do is you need to create a session. Okay, so the calculations happen inside a session. Okay, so then why is TensorFlow popular? TensorFlow is the better library for all because it is accessible to everyone. TensorFlow library integrates different API to create a scale deep learning architecture like CNN. CNN means convolutional neural network, or RNN. RNN means recurrent neural networks. Okay, so this is why TensorFlow is very popular, because it is accessible to everyone. It integrates different API to create a CNN, that is convolutional neural network, or RNN, recurrent neural network. TensorFlow is based on graphical computation. It can allow the developer to create the construction of the neural network with tensor board. So all these definitions, terminologies, you will understand them clearly later. So this TensorFlow has a tensor board, a tool called tensor board. This tensor board helps debugging our program. It runs on CPU and even GPU, graphical processing unit. So the main thing is TensorFlow attracts the most considerable popularity on GitHub compared to other deep learning framework. Okay, so this was the basic introduction about TensorFlow. So we have seen the components of TensorFlow, that is what's a tensor, what is a graph, what is a session, okay, and why is TensorFlow popular, and what are the op nodes, yes, and what is the graphical representation, and what are the advantages, okay, and what is the history of TensorFlow, and who developed TensorFlow, what are the features of TensorFlow, we have understood, right? So in the next lecture, we will start with applications, the use case scenario of TensorFlows, okay? Then we will have some better basics on TensorFlow in the next lecture, all right? Any doubts, you can mail us. Thank you.